Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is another episode of my podcast that I just started called Life as an Autistic Person. This is episode 2, which is called Social Interactions. And I'm going to be talking about social interactions that I've had with many people, family, friends, all that stuff. I touched a bit about this in my last podcast episode, but now we're going to go full on in detail, with more specific examples and all the like. So yeah, let's just get right into it, shall we? So yeah, social interactions. These are big to deal with as an autistic person, and I guess I should start off with my earliest memory in terms of social interactions. Like, you could, there's technically a few, that I'll bring up real quick, where I didn't realize the proper, social conventions. For example, my mom always tells me this story about how we were at, a store or something, and they were giving out free flashlights, and then I told everyone, I said, why you want to get a free flashlight? We have so many of them at home. And then my mom and dad were like, shh, shut up. So yeah, clearly, that's a big example. But the one that I can clearly remember vividly is when I first started kindergarten. This was when my dad was still alive. Like I talked about in the last podcast episode, my dad passed away when I was 6 years old, and actually on my birthday, which was sad. But this was before he even passed away. He was still around. He was a bit sick, but he was still active somewhat. He was still there. But when I started kindergarten, I was very, very nervous, and I did not want to talk to anyone there. Now, you could say this is like other kids too. And this is the case for some other kids, but usually they get over it. I never did, within the first day, within the first few days, within the first few months, I still didn't talk to anyone, and my dad, again, was still around for at least a little bit. And yeah, I do remember, a teacher, saying to me, oh, you wanna, come over here and work with us, they were doing a... They were singing a song of the months, January, February, March, April, blah blah blah, and they wanted me to join in, the teacher, and I hesitated, but I went along anyway, and yeah, that did not help me at all. So that's a clear big memory. But obviously things got far worse with my social interactions, which were not already that good anyway, when my dad was around, but they got far worse when my dad passed away. So after my dad passed away, imagine what I just described to you, but 10 times worse, and 10 times the case with my family members. Yeah, even my family, specifically not the family I live with, my brother and my mom, I could talk to them just fine, but even my close extended family, my grandma, who I call mama, I've always had trouble, and I still do have trouble talking to her, basically ever since my dad passed away. I mean, I don't remember much when my dad was around, but I think I talked to my extended family a bit more, and even a little bit after my dad passed away, specifically when it comes with my cousin, who I talked to a bit, when my dad passed away, a year or two afterwards. But nowadays, I just have trouble talking to them, and I can't really explain why. It just, I just feel awkward talking to them. I have nothing to share to them, so I'm just very quiet. I don't say much besides, yes or no, or nod. And oh God, this is really bad. Sometimes my mom asks me to do something for my grandma. And just in general, sometimes she will ask me to, ask someone something, like at a store. And this is really bad, when it's those strangers, because I have to ask them. And I always deny it. And then eventually she gets like a little bit mad at me and says, okay, fine, whatever. But then when it's my grandma, I'm like, oh, like I have to do it because then I feel bad. So then I do it, but like it just feels really awkward to me. Like I say it very softly and very shy, for lack of a better word. And like I hate that about myself. I hate that I can't even talk to my own grandma, like really, like I can't. Or even my other family, like I have to be near my mom and say something like to her, to my mom, to tell my grandma, or I say it to both of them. Like I don't know, like it's weird how it works. And this is especially the case for Christmas, where my grandma comes over and spends like a day or two with us. Like it's always a good time for Christmas. Like I love hanging out with the family, but it is very awkward to have my grandma there and like not me saying much. Like I talk, but like I mostly just talk to my mom, whatever. And then while my grandma's in like the same room, I don't really talk to my grandma directly. And I hate that. I wish that's something I could change, but that's been the case ever since my dad passed away, And then this is a similar case with my cousin too, who I talked to a bit more, because my cousin used to come over after my dad passed away for like summer vacation. He used to basically be like a brother to me during those like few 2 months of summer. And I talked to him, but my mom says that she doesn't remember me talking to him that much. And I think that is the case where I did talk to him, but I didn't want other people to know I talked to him, if that makes sense. Why? He's my cousin. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. But so like I remember talking to him like in private basically and having fun. But when my mom was in the room, I would barely not say anything. And I hate that, I wish there was something I could do about that, but what's done is done. I could say I could work on it in the future, but like I can't even really do that because like I'm, I guess, a little bit better at talking to people. Not really though, like 1% more. But yeah. Now with strangers, I touched on this a bit, with shopping people that like at a store. But it's still really bad for strangers or, classmates when I was in school, where I would not talk to them at all. I would not talk to basically any of the kids in my class unless I had to. For example, school projects would suck majorly. I had to talk to them, but like I barely did still. And this was the case for like a long time until 5th grade, and even then I was still hesitant to talk to people. I touched on this a lot in my last episode of the podcast. How I talked to people, quote unquote friends I had to help me get a girl, to become my girlfriend. But like it was still really hard. What really changed though was in middle school and the beginning of high school, where I started to take a bit of action and change myself, but be a completely different person. And that wasn't right. And I changed basically my personality to be more like these people. And so I was starting to become more social, even though I hated it. But here's the thing. Even though I was a little bit more social and I was able to get more friends, especially in middle school, when I didn't have those friends in like my classes, because there were some classes I didn't have any friends, I would just go back. I would basically revert back to my old self, my old quiet self, the hardworking student that doesn't talk to anyone. But when I did have friends, I was still hardworking, but I was more talkative. I kind of misbehaved, not badly, but like, a little bit more like them, which wasn't good, but it wasn't bad, if that makes sense. So I just remember that very clearly. In high school, this was still the case for the very beginning, but eventually my friends started to drift away, either because we had so many classes like separate from each other. Some moved away, and eventually came back way later on. So I was basically left almost by myself, with like one or two friends left in high school, and I, for the most part, just stayed back to my old self, where I was very quiet unless I was with them, which was the only time I was really with my friends was like in the cafeteria for lunch, And yeah, I'm not proud of it, I don't like that I forced myself to change just so I could get friends, because it does suck, I am happy that the friends I did keep. One of the friends I still have, Isaac, watches the channel a lot. His name is Scythe on YouTube, but he's one of my true friends, and I made him my friend to kind of forcing myself to be basically someone else, because he was friends with another kid, and then I became friends with him. But eventually that kid left. Sebastian, he left, and then eventually came back way later on near the end of high school. But anyway, that's besides the point. So it was just me and Isaac, and we were able to go closer, and we had a lot of similarities with each other, He suspected maybe he had autism, though I know for sure he had ADHD, and, autism and ADHD, pair a lot together, pretty well together, and we had a lot of similarities, so, yeah, I'm glad I was able to make at least a true friend, and I have made some true friends before. In middle school, I had a close best friend, Isaiah, who was also autistic. I didn't know I was autistic at the time, but we were very close. Specifically the girl that I liked and she liked me that I mentioned in the last podcast, Clarissa. We were close, so I was close to people, but I had to basically force myself to be someone else in order to get close, and I don't like that, But what's done is done, I guess. Now, I mentioned Clarissa, and I won't touch on this too much, because I did cover it a bit in the last episode, but I will say, the social interactions, got how I said it was already 10 times worse after my dad passed away. Now add 10 again, 10 times to the 10 times already that we did, and it was way worse for, girls that I had a crush on. So, for example, let's start off at the very beginning with my first crush, being the girl next door. Her name was Nadia. And I had a crush on her ever since we moved here. She came by, when we first moved in here. In fact, I think my mom says that she even gave me, a kiss on the cheek. And I think that's what started it. Even though I don't really remember that or interacting with her before elementary school, where we had the same class in kindergarten, But I went to a lot of her birthday parties, and I had a crush on her for many years until fourth grade, and it was rough because we had she gave me a kiss, so she kind of, I guess, liked me maybe when we were really young, but obviously as time went on, nothing happened, and I think she just stopped caring. But I still went over her house, my mom and her mom were friends, so I went over to their house a lot. I also played a lot with her brother, who was younger, Jose. But I just remember hanging out with them a lot, but only talking really to Jose, even though I was I want to really talk to Nadia, I want to talk to her, but even though I didn't talk that much to Jose, I still talked a little bit more, but I was I want to be there for Nadia, but I couldn't, so it was really awkward when we all hung out together, and then sometimes one of Nadia's friends would come over that was also a neighbor, and it was really awkward. I still remember this one time where, oh my god, so they had a bouncy like a trampoline thing, you know. And I remember very vividly where Nadia and her friend, they were talking about a crush they had on a guy, and I was just there listening. I did not say anything. I did not do anything, you know. I was just there listening to what they were saying, and it hurt me so much. And you know, like, it's bad when someone says that and you like them or whatever, but like, it's also just really bad when you don't say nothing at all. You're just kind of there like a statue, and oh my god, that's so embarrassing. But so that never really happened anything with Nadia there. Eventually I stopped liking her, and I started liking one of my friends, starting around the end of 4th grade, going into 5th grade, being Isabel, which I talked about this a bit on the last podcast, but basically she was, again, a close friend. I started to have feelings for her, and it was very awkward. I would send her like notes. I would put notes in her backpack, and like, she knew I liked her, but I did really nothing with it until like one time I asked these group of kids that were kind of bullies / kind of my friends, you know. Again, I started to talk a little bit more in 5th grade, but like not by much. I would convince them like, oh, while I'm in the bathroom, you guys give her a note from me saying if you want to be my girlfriend. And then like, she said yes, but I did nothing with that information. I was just very awkward, not doing anything. So yeah, that's a whole thing, you know. And then like I talked about this, how at the end of the school year, you know, I I wanted to like talk to her and confirm, okay, let's do this, but I still chicken out and I didn't do it, you know. And I still attempted some things in the summer, but like, you know, I talked about that in the last podcast episode. But now we move on to Clarissa, who is a Jehovah's Witness girl, so it's already an uphill battle in that I can't date her and she can't date me. But I didn't know this at the time, and I started liking her in 7th grade, and it was rough because for a few reasons. One, I started to like her when my grandma was in the hospital for something. You know, I was really worried for my grandma. And so she was in the hospital, and we had to go over there every day after school for like a month or something. This was at the beginning of like 7th grade, and like we would go over there, you know. But like, so just to kind of clear my mind, I was like, oh my god, this girl looks cool, but I gotta focus on you know, my grandma, you know. Like, she's very cool. Like, so we had a lot in common from what I saw, and we interacted a little bit in like theater class. That's what the class we shared. We also shared a health class at the very beginning of the you know, we had like 8 periods. So first period was like health class, you know. The theater class was like the second to last class. But yeah, it was rough because you know, I decided not to talk to her for a while because my grandma was sick. And eventually she got better. We had to take care of her at home. Like, you know, we brought her to our house for a few months, but eventually she got better. But like, at that time I still didn't talk to the girl, and like for a while I stopped doing anything until like half a year into 7th grade, where we were paired together for a health class. We sat in the same table, and then I started to talk to her more. I tried to be a little bit more social because, again, this was the case where middle school, you know, I talked about how I was being more social, except for classes that, you know, I didn't have any friends with. But basically I had to build up you know, a friendship with her, and that was rough because as an autistic guy, you know, it's just very awkward. And what I had to do was I looked up many videos on how to talk to girls, not like those, alpha male videos or whatever, or like those chads, like I'm not talking about those videos, but like actual good videos, either from like actual girls talking about this, but mostly I watched this guy called the Josh Speaks, who again I talked about this a bit in the last podcast episode. But basically, this guy was really cool, and he wasn't like a sigma male or alpha male. I don't really know the terms, but like he was just a nice, normal person, and he told you, okay, this is my experience. It didn't work out so well, but then I did this, and this actually worked out pretty well. So I would recommend you guys do that, maybe, but add this or this. Like he would just give honest advice that came from him that he experienced, and I actually used that advice pretty well. It was rough, don't get me wrong, at first, because I was like basically trying to, like, I crammed all this information in my head, and I'm good at remembering a lot of stuff, but like it was just hard to like execute it, basically. So yeah, but eventually I was able to do it, and eventually we got closer, and then she eventually liked me, but then there was a thing where I was still awkward. I didn't know what to say or how to ask her out, so I did the no thing again, like I did with Isabel, and then she denied me. And then eventually, things were still getting good, things were still getting closer for us. Eventually she told me, okay, look, I like you a lot, like I really do, but my God, I can't date you because I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And that was rough, but at least I knew now that she liked me. When she told me this news, I was very happy because, one, I never had a girl that I liked like me. I've had some girls like me, but usually when I was like really young. Like I remember when I was like a kid, I don't remember this, but my mom told me, but like that there were like two twins that were fighting over me in like a playground. So that was funny. And then this is what I do remember. In elementary school, there was this girl called Mia who had a big crush on me. And also another girl, Victoria, who still went to the same school as me in high school, and she actually looked kind of attractive, so that's kind of funny. But in elementary school, she looked a little weird. Mia, the other girl, was cute looking, but I, again, was focused on Nadia. But anyway, these two girls had a crush on me in elementary school. The Mia one was a little bit, it was just an innocent crush, With Victoria, she was kind of crazy, not gonna lie. She was a little bit whack. Her mom was also very whack. In fact, my mom really didn't like her mom. Like, it was like a whole thing where we had like a weird relationship with them. But again, like in high school, she looked kind of attractive, so oh my God. But anyway, the point being, I never had a girl that I liked like me back, so this was like a big shock and a big surprise, and I was really happy, and then I got depressed, and then it just been like that for like ever since I knew her. There would be times where I would be happy, that we were close, that we were basically a couple without being a couple. We hung out a lot together. We did there was like field trips, and we would spend time together, but and like she did really like me a lot, but she just couldn't do anything about it, and it just went back and forth to being like a depressive thing, of like, oh, this is nice, and oh, I'm depressed, we can't have nothing else, it was just a whole thing. But I had to work my way up there from being, basically an awkward guy to not talking to her, to being an awkward guy that did talk to her. I was still very awkward around her, but I was more confident in many ways. I say awkward because I remember a few times asking her, like, oh, do you want to, kiss, like I would like to do that, just something like that, but like it was very awkward for me to say, and like it was very awkward to hug her, and like she eventually accepted it, but then like at the beginning of high school, she started not to like my hugs because, see, I don't know, man, like it was just a whole thing with her. where I really do miss her, and I did like her a lot, and she liked me. But because of, I talked about this again in the last podcast episode, I'm saying this a lot in this video because I am crazy. But basically, there was this another guy that started to talk to her and was in her classes in high school, and I thought that he was taking her away from me, even though we weren't really close, in that way. But still, I was felt jealous, and eventually we had a falling out where I got mad at that guy and I got mad at her. But she was defending that guy. But I don't know. I think everyone was at fault in that situation, but I still think it's partially my fault, and I wish she was still part of my life, even though, nothing would have happened. I would have still loved her to be part of my life, and I still have dreams about her. But that's a whole separate thing. Basically, yeah, social interaction, even though I was, able to talk to her, it was still not that good. So, yeah. I guess to wrap up this podcast episode, I should talk about a little bit of an achievement I had in terms of social communication, interaction, whatever, somewhat more recently, and that being, so I recently, a year ago by now, but I got my GED. Basically, I dropped out of high school because this actually related to social interaction. I just didn't want to talk to people anymore. I was very, very nervous. In fact, before I get to the story, I will say that I dropped out because, I just didn't want to go to school anymore because I was a big fan of COVID. I actually really like the lockdowns, I just not going out and talking to people. I like just being on my computer doing work, and that's it. Sometimes there was cases where we had to have the camera on or we had to say something, but it was overall way more comfortable and more manageable than just going out and actually being in class and having to interact with all these people. But so when we eventually had to go back, the COVID thing was during my sophomore year. So when we had to go back for our junior and senior year, it was really rough. Junior year, I barely managed, I barely hold it on, but I got through it. Senior year, that's when it started to crumble and fall apart, where I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So I eventually started to avoid school, and then my mom got mad at me, saying that the cops would come, and then the only way to solve it would be just to drop out, so that otherwise I would be having to owe tons of hours, and eventually I got my GED very soon after. After I dropped out, I basically immediately went to get my GED, and I got it a little bit earlier than when I would have graduated, but yeah, so it was still I was still nervous about that. That's the big reason why I dropped out, was because of the social interaction. But not even a few months later, I actually did have a little bit of a breakthrough when it came to this, where after I got my GED, I was having I did the testing, I had to go to a ceremony, where they was having this place where other, people, got their GED, and there were a lot of people my age around there, some a little bit older, but a lot of them look almost like my age, Even one girl that was a little bit older, she was 22 or something, 20 something. She looked still pretty young. But this, anyway, when I went there, I had to talk to some people because there was not much to do. We waited there for a few hours till we got everything ready for our gowns, the ceremonies, all that stuff. But I was able to talk to some people there, and I was very nervous at first, but, they're the ones that started the conversation, so I'm like, okay, I guess I have to talk to them, and that's the case with a lot of people, where if they start a conversation, I kind of have to, talk to them, I'm not really the one to talk to them myself because I am, you know, again, anti-social, like it's just a whole thing, but I actually was able to talk to them to a pretty good degree, you know? I actually had a bit of fun, and I made a few, like, kind of friends there, you know? One kid, even I found out, I gave him my YouTube channel. I talked about how I did YouTube, and he actually, came by, like, a few months later, to check me out in, like, a live chat thing on a live stream, you know? And that was pretty cool, but... yeah. I say kid. He was like, I think like 19 or whatever. You know what I mean? You know, similar people my age. And then I also talked to this girl that was like a mom. She was a mom of a very young kid. You know, 20 something, 22, whatever. That's the one I told you about. And again, I was able to actually talk to them a little bit. You know, those two people I talked to, and it was a bit fun. You know, it was actually pretty decently fun to do that. You know, and that's one of my biggest achievements was just doing that. Which is funny enough, why I dropped out, you know, just a few months earlier. But I guess it was just more manageable because one, it was just a one-day thing, you know, and two, it was only with two people that I talked to, you know, while in high school you have to talk to really a lot of people, you know. I guess if you don't have to, but you know, like you still, there's a lot of cases where you do have to for like group projects or whatever. But yeah, guys, I think that's gonna be it for this podcast episode. You know, I could go into some more details about how, you know, I was very awkward when it came to, again, school projects. Like I didn't say anything, you know. Some cases I either did like basically all the work or none of the work. But I still tried to contribute by like trying to basically whisper like suggestions, but like almost no one would hear me. So that was really rough. Things got a little bit better when I had friends, you know, and I could do group projects with them. But I still wouldn't recommend it because even though, like, I remember this one vividly where it was in 6th grade. We had to do like we could do either a group project or we could do it separate. And I wanted to do the thing separate, but I had a friend in the class. It was like reading. We had to like write a book or something that we were going to read to elementary school kids. But anyway, what happened was that I wanted to do it separate, and my friend was like really mad. He was like, well, why not? Let's do it together. But I just like working by myself. Even though I had that friend, you know, in that class, I still feel this way where I feel like I can just work better on my own, you know, and I don't have to like say things like, oh, we should do this, and then they disagree, and then I'm like, oh no, come on, let's do this, you know. Like, I just feel like that's a lot of hassle, and I just rather do what I want to do. There's a lot of stories like that, you know, but I think that's more than enough talking. I think I covered basically the gist of everything, so I think that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thank you, Nils Edom, Damian Grace, Sparkly Brawler, and Scythe for becoming YouTube or Patreon members. Like, subscribe, play some Xenoblade, and I'll catch you guys next time for more. Peace. Bye, everyone.